Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters. My name is the Reverend Larry Camp, the pastor of the Bethlehem Baptist Church in the East New York section, which we affectionately known as the Bethlehem Nation. Insight is a program that has been designed for our viewers, and the guests speak about everything as it relates to social issues, as it relates to politics, as it relates to the race issue in this country, certainly as it relates to relationships, as it deals with young people and even seniors. So I just want to let y'all know, brothers and sisters, that the election is over. The election really is not over, but I just figure I'd throw that up in there since we have a millennial and a very gifted young lady, and we're glad to have her on tonight, Miss Tameka Ridley. Tameka Ridley, who is an author of the book. She's an author, writer, and educator, and an author of a book called A Rose in a Dark Place. We're going to be talking about that extensively on tonight, but we're going to start out with some other things. And so we're glad to have her on this evening. Ms. Ridley, how are you doing? Unmute your mic. Unmute your mic.
Hi, how are you? I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Thank you so much, Larry, for having me. And thank you, Bethlehem Nation, for having me as a guest today. I really appreciate that.
We're so glad to have you on. I think without a doubt, people want to hear your voices. We are so glad that, and I imagine that people from Lehman College are tuning in, and as relates to many of your friends and colleagues, so we're glad to have you on tonight. And so it's just good to see you. You look great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Matter of fact, you get the facial structure like your mom. We'll get into that later. Don't forget it. And so let me just say this. As it relates to education now, what are you studying currently at Lehman College?
I'm studying business and accounting at Lehman.
Very good.
Yes.
And you just also won something yesterday.
Yes, I did. I was officially elected as senator at Lehman College. Yes. So that is an amazing opportunity for me to do a lot of different things and help make great changes at Lehman College. So I'm really excited.
That has to do with the student government. Is that correct? You lead me along that way. Is that what it deals with?
Yes. We actually I had a meeting earlier today, was our my first meeting with them. And basically what they actually do is they help legislate like different academic policies. So previously when I obtained my business administration degree at Hostos Community College, and while there I was actually working on the accredited company Middle States Commission of Higher Education. And when I worked with them, we basically set the standards for college education. And so now basically Senate actually, they have to align the policies with what Middle States Commission of Higher Education sets out in their outline for their standards. So basically you follow the standards and then you establish the goals and then you make changes.
That's great, and that's impressive because of the fact of really not knowing how things are going in our system, considering COVID, and of course considering the landscape of the country as it relates to politics. Now, as you're a senator, that's very important. Just the fact that you laid that out is very important for future students to come.
Yes.
Would you say that?
Absolutely. It's really, really important now more than ever, especially because we're dealing with online learning right now at CUNY. And so basically those policies to implement students going back to college on campus, those policies are going to begin with what the senators come up with in our meetings.
Very good. Very good. So you're advocating for, the whole structure of it and how it would be better even presently and moving up the road. So that's good. Now, since we got an election, not your election because you won, we know that. You won. But since we have the election process, how do you process this election? Looking at it from last night to now and possibly in the future?
I'm so torn right now. I'm excited at the same time, but I will say since President Obama was in office, I haven't been glued to the TV the way I am right now. No matter what happens in this election, I feel like the one thing that we need to know as a people, as a community, is that the fight just doesn't stop. Whether Donald Trump still maintains his presidency or if Joe Biden wins, we still have a fight. We still have issues within our community that need to be addressed. And we need to be more hopeful that those things are gonna progress. I mean, change doesn't happen overnight. We may not see it in our lifetime, but we need to continue to fight for generations after us. And so I'm hopeful that I see that a lot of people went out and vote, and that is amazing. People who have never voted before have went out and vote. And so I'm excited. I'm going to be glued to the TV until it's over. And I have faith right now.
Let me ask you this, Ms. Ridley. You're considered a millennial, is that correct?
Yes.
How do you view, you may have heard it certainly in your areas of employment and things of that nature in the school. How do you view millennials who think that voting is unnecessary?
Well, um, I
Because
can,
we talk
I
about,
can,
go
I
ahead.
can definitely understand the feeling of people feeling that way in some sense, because in my community, I know a lot of us feel like we don't have a voice. And so feeling like you don't have a voice, and definitely feeling like things are not changing as fast as we want them to be, or just not having the trust in either candidates. I know I will say the last election, I didn't vote. I didn't vote the last election, and I just knew Hillary had it, and I didn't have to vote. And so when the turnout came out that President Donald Trump won, I was just like floored, and it was a feeling of regret that maybe had I used my voice or other people used their voice, that maybe things would have changed. And so I'm not saying that you should feel like that. I'm saying that now more than ever, if we all stand together and we all do it together, that there is a possibility of change. History shows that things changed. Our ancestors fought, and now we have that right. And so whenever I say to myself anything about voting, like my husband, this was his first year voting. Surprisingly, I had no clue. But just, making sure I registered and he registered, that was just something that was, easy for me to just make sure was done. And all I can do is continue to advocate and say, listen, look for people who represent your best interests and your values. If you don't find that, then you need to sit there and educate yourself and be that leader in your community that you want to see. And so that's what I'm trying to do. I feel like, if you don't see someone there helping you, and you know that you have the education and the skills to go ahead and try to make change in your own community, do so.
That you brought up an interesting point. You said I didn't vote last time because I just knew Hillary had it. And
Hmm.
that's an interesting point. And I wonder how many other people go through that same thing, including those who are supporters of Trump. Do
Hmm.
they do they refuse to do it because they think that it's pretty much in the bag? We talked about other people not voting at all, but you brought up the first interesting point I've ever heard. Now
Hmm.
others probably heard that before I did, that you did not vote because you knew she had it in the bag.
Yeah. And my other thing was, she didn't fully have my trust. And that's the thing that a lot of leaders need to understand. It's not just about what you're going to do for the community, but does the community trust you? What is the relationship that you're building with the community? So I didn't have that trust, in that, what have I seen you do? I see millions and millions of people incarcerated. What plans do you have to help those people? And I just felt like, the time that was spent, she just didn't have my full trust. And of course I felt like she was way more qualified for the job, but she just didn't have my trust at that point.
And then your interest of naturally is your children, your
Yeah.
husband,
Mm-hmm.
and your mom, and
Mm-hmm.
of course, your dad,
Mm-hmm.
who I haven't seen since I was a preteen. But I
Mm-hmm.
always remembered your dad, Herman, how he was a tremendous, great sense of humor. That's what I remembered about him.
Mm-hmm.
So now, let me ask you this: how is it as you're developing being an entrepreneur?
Oh wow, it's incredible. It's a awesome experience. It's something years ago I never even saw myself doing, everything just aligned itself so amazing in my journey. Um it just started with me going back to school. I went back to school. I just knew that I wanted to go to Hostos Community College. That was the one thing I knew. I wasn't sure about majors, so I just tried different things out. I tried out criminal justice. I tried out, because years ago I was interested in studying law. Um, so now doing business, I still have a love of law, but now doing business. It's just so amazing because you want to build up your community. And what better way than to learn how to establish businesses that could help you improve your community, and teaching other people within the community how to do those things as well. So what better way, right?
Right. I think when you talked about, building law, and you talked about how at some point you missed the point in voting for Hillary Clinton. But when you talk about law in a community, how do you say, even though your word will be, I do understand it, but how do you say to people of your hue, of our background, who say that the law is never going to work? So therefore, everything we do in term, even in marching, is a waste of time. How do you respond to people like that?
I definitely feel like history clearly shows that that's untrue. I mean, look how far we've come already. I mean, like I said, the change that we need is definitely not going to happen overnight. And like I said, it may not happen in a century, but we have to continue. We have to continue to persevere through all of this. I mean, our ancestors fought just so we can get to this level, and we have to continue, or we're just going to go backwards. And it's really important for us to exercise our voices and our minds for our community. I mean, it's a lot of people who just don't have faith in the system at all. Our justice system, it really needs some changes, definitely, especially because I feel like a lot of us feeling oppressed by our system. And so I would definitely say, educate yourselves more, advocate for yourself. If not for anybody else, advocate for yourself, advocate for your children, and build a legacy. That's what we're all trying to do here, is build a legacy for our community. If we don't sit there and vote, and we don't sit there and exercise our voices, we'll never be heard, and things will absolutely never change.
So you will probably do that same, or imparting that same kind of thought to your children as well.
Absolutely. My kids have been watching the news right along with me. Luckily they attend a school that teaches them about their history, and teaching them about voting, and how important this election is for our future and our community. And so they're really excited. They're really nervous, just maybe more nervous than I am, because, the next 4 years, I mean, we definitely need to see something else go on.
There are many of millennials in our hue who refer constantly about the ancestors. We've heard it said, the spirit of the ancestors. And some people from a theological realm, not all, some people from a theological realm said, well, we talk about the ancestors, we have to talk about God. But God has given us our forebears as a remembrance, as he had given the Hebrews, that to remember your past and remember those who came before you. So I think as you speak to those, it's so encouraging to me personally, particularly when it comes to your husband and your children, how you would make that continue to move down in the level of your family line. So now, having said that, how important is family to you?
Oh my gosh. Family is so important to me. It's my motivation. For my children, I just wanted them to be inspired by me. I didn't want them to be inspired by what they see as what a woman is supposed to represent on TV, because the way women are portrayed today, a lot of them are just not what I want my daughters to follow after. I want them to be inspired by education, academic excellence. I want them to know that there's a future for you. And if you want, to really be successful in life, you really have to exercise your mind. It's so important. It's so important, because how do you implement change if you don't have an education, and you don't understand the law, you don't understand different policies, you cannot understand your own rights. And so if you can't understand certain things, it's no way that you can really implement the change that you need for generations after. And so one thing I've been trying to instill in them, especially with me releasing a new book, is I've been sitting with them for them to write their history and document what's going on from their own eyes. Because, yeah, people can hear me and I can articulate myself a certain type of way, but how do children see this pandemic? How do children see the George Floyd protests? How do children see this election? And so it's really important for all of our voices to be heard, no matter what age and what gender.
Wow, Ms. Ridley, that's very, very powerful. My guest tonight is Tameka Ridley. On the screen, you will see a Cash App that will come across. And while I'm interviewing her, please be a blessing to her. And you see it right there, $ Tameka Ridley. Tameka Ridley is right there. So please, as we have asked for all of our guests, if you can please be a blessing to her. Now, let me ask you this. Considering your age group,
okay,
and considering the millennials, how do you view or envision your generation moving forward in a positive way?
One of the most positive ways that I see my generation moving forward is documented history from our eyes, from our perspective. A lot of times we've seen history narrated from other people about what happened with our ancestry. And I feel like now more than ever, it's really important for us to narrate our own stories so that way we can build a connection with generations after us. I was having a conversation with someone recently about trying to find my history and trying to find my ancestry and how difficult it's been for me because there's so much history that is missing, and I feel like just imagine if everyone in our community narrated our own stories of everything that's going on affecting our communities today. Generations after us will have the real story from us, and it wouldn't be depicted any other way. And it's so important for us to change history in that this is the best way for our voices to be heard. It's really the best way for our voices to be heard because it's documented. It's something that's not going to disappear, So it's really important now more than ever to document what's happening right now and narrate our own stories.
So you're saying the advantage, really, quite frankly, with this generation, for many, many years, we've had oral
yes.
narratives. We were not allowed to write. We had oral narratives, and we lived off the oral narratives. And what you're saying now is not only the oral, but written documents.
Yes.
That it can be passed on to those who are coming ahead.
Yes. So that way, generations after us don't have to feel lost. I know at times I felt lost, searching and searching and searching for something. I don't know what it is. It's something that I'm looking for that I just can't find. And so I sit there and I keep researching different things, watching different movies. I became a student research assistant for CUNY. And I just was researching and researching and researching. And it's still so much that I just can't, find. And I just thought about, what if every single one of our ancestors documented their life story? We would know the obstacles that they went through, how they overcame them. We would be inspired. We would understand and vividly see how change is going in our community from our own eyes, and it's those things are just so powerful to see because once we start doing things like this and we continue to do this, that's when we build a legacy. And if we really want to see change in the future, we have to start now.
Wow. That says a lot. Now, I want to let you know I read the book in its entirety. We're going to really get into some how profound the book was and how people can read it and how people should be able to know that this is also the possibility of a young lady or a young boy, for that matter, going through the same thing. Your book, Arose in a Dark Place.
Yes.
Poems from the Soul. Arose in a Dark Place. Poems from the Soul. Now, I had highlighted some things. There's some quotations in this book I highlighted, and some of it out, but I'm going to. There's some things in there that I saw. Give us the whole sense of this book that just came out on. I think it was yesterday. Is that right, Ms.
November 1st on Sunday.
Yeah, I want to give you a book. There's a preacher friend of mine that watches this every week, and her name is Reverend Tisha Dixon Williams, who has a book coming out tomorrow called Sis, I See You. And I want to get her book to you, but I want to get your book to her. And the reason why I'm going to get your book to her, when it says Arose in a Dark Place, Poems from the Soul, and it's almost like her book is saying, Sis, I see you, or I understand you. So, and of course, yours has an intellectual edge to it. Speak about what this book meant to you, and what inspired you to write it.
It's so interesting. It was a lot of different things that inspired me to write. During the time the pandemic, the pandemic had just started, had just reached the United States, and I just was. They had like this program at Lehman College called Obscura Literary Group, and they were requesting poetry just to uplift different students who were positive with the coronavirus and just, needed some type of inspiration. And then, so I started doing poetry, and I attended a few workshops, and I joined this group at Lehman called the You Are History Workshop. And basically, they instilled in us the importance of documenting our history, especially during the George Floyd protests and during the pandemic. And I just felt like it was so important for my story to be told, as well as other people. I wanted to inspire young women who feel lost right now. Especially when I was growing up in my teenage years, I definitely felt lost, and feeling lost in a really, really violent environment. It's really difficult to overcome certain obstacles. And the person that you see today is definitely not the person that I was years ago. And so I want women to know that it is okay if you're going through something. It is okay if you're feeling lost, because with time and education, things will change, and there's still opportunities for you to grow into the woman that you're destined to become. And so I really felt like I needed to empower women, because I strongly believe women should empower other women. And it was so interesting that even men purchased my book and got something out of it as well. I was definitely trying to share my story in a way where I gave the real deal. A lot of poetry that I've read seems so sugar coated, and where I came from definitely wasn't too sweet. And so you get the nitty, the gritty, you get it, raw, uncut, and then you get the whole experience. So it's, even for young people, I have like a listening playlist to go with the book to give you a whole different vibe. So that way you could really feel the emotions that I was going through during those times. These are different self-reflections. And what's so interesting about it was I didn't realize until I started writing how much pain I actually still had in relation to my past. It had been suppressed so much. And it was something that I didn't even speak about orally. That when I begin to write, I begin to heal. And so that's another part of telling your story written. You begin to heal when you address those issues and you talk about those problems and you share those issues, because at the end of the day, you're definitely not the only person going through something. And just sharing how you overcame your story could definitely inspire somebody else to heal and to persevere through whatever else they're going through.
Before we move to the next segment of this discussion,
Mm-hmm.
I ask that Reverend Derek Jackson would play the trailer so the people can see it, the trailer of the book. Thank you. So as you can see, brothers and sisters, it's available at Amazon. I have my book, and I made sure I read it, because I have to ask you this, Ms. Ridley. What made you?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people are not transparent
Mm-hmm.
in life. There's a lot of people that are not transparent in church.
Mm-hmm.
They want to tell the superficial story. And I'm only giving this as an example because I've been in for 45 years. The transparency is God is good, but don't tell why God is good. And if they tell why God is good, it's basically something superficial.
Mm-hmm.
He stopped me from drinking. He stopped me from using drugs. But there's some more deeper hurt that goes there. And for you to be transparent, what made you even, you talked about healing, as you wrote, you were healed. What made you just be transparent to share yourself and your story with everyone else that's looking at this?
I just felt like I felt so misunderstood. I felt like I was going through a phase where everything in my life started making sense. And I just felt like so many good things were happening to me and I was just being uplifted. And I just was like, people were looking at me like, I'm a leader, I'm inspiring. And I just started to feel like I need you to know who I really am. I need you to know how I got to this place, because it's not just important to see who I am today, but see where I came from. And a lot of people, they get to a certain place and they forget where they came from. And that was so important to me, because the way I wrote my book, you can feel the emotions. It doesn't matter what race you are, what gender you are, you can feel my emotions from that time frame. And for me to be able to express that same emotion that I still feel today from years and years ago, and be, as authentic as possible when delivering my story. It was difficult. It was difficult. It was a lot of drafts because, I just wanted to make sure that that people understood who I was and why I did the things that I did. Because a lot of people, they just see someone for what they've done, for their actions, and they don't see them for what actually transpired to make them do certain things, and for you to actually see my story and see where I came from, now you get a better understanding of who I am and actually how much I've actually overcome. And it's really important for women to understand that. I had a conversation with a friend during the process of me writing the book, which really, really pushed me to really, really get this book out. and she was struggling with her daughter. And her daughter, she suspected that she was in a gang, and she suspected that she was fighting and doing so many different things, and she didn't understand why these things were happening. And she was like, you know what, I feel like I'm just gonna write her off. And I was like, had someone wrote me off, had someone not supported me and been there for me when I was going through what I was going through, I wouldn't be here today. And so we have to understand that, yeah, there's some things that we're misunderstanding about our children, but we have to continue to support them and educate them. That's why I push education so hard, because it's the only way to open up your mind to different things and understand it, and having respect for people in general, so I really think it is really, 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 really important.
You
Really
know,
important.
you said that it affected so many people, and it didn't matter what gender, including me personally, because my father wasn't there for my upbringing. I mean, I knew my dad and everything else, and he got to know my children when he came in the latter part, certainly of our lives. And I don't blame him for it, because my mom was 15 when she was pregnant with my oldest brother. She was got married at 16, had me at 18. And the importance of a father, we always, in the society, is talked one way. The importance of a father's relationship and a son, but very rarely do we talk about the father's relationship with the daughter. I'm going to read this line, and then you elaborate.
Okay.
He made me feel special when I was delicate, then left me to grow up feeling abandoned and lost like a rose in a dark place.
So one thing, when I was going through a lot growing up, and I mean, from just when my father was around, he was the only man I saw. Like, he was just like God to me. I admired my father more than anybody on the earth. So when my father left, I was completely devastated. I was completely, utterly devastated. And it's something even today that still breaks my heart, honestly. And we've never had the relationship that I felt like we had. And there's still time to have that, but I've come to a point where I have to just accept, where we are, and be okay with that. Like one of the poems, Coming To, I come to a place where I say, I have to just acknowledge what's going on. I have to acknowledge that I can't change everything. I can't do it. I can't change it. And I have to begin to heal. Another thing, when I say he left me feeling abandoned and alone like a rose in a dark place, a lot of people, I don't know if you guys remember, I'm about to show my age right now. Aretha Franklin's A Rose.
Yes, yes.
You remember the Aretha Franklin Still a Rose?
Yes, I did.
That song resonated with me so much growing up. And it was the one thing that always reminded me that I was a woman, that I was beautiful, because a lot of times I didn't feel that way. I didn't feel beautiful. I didn't feel accepted by anyone. I felt isolated, alone, and lost. And so to know that you're a rose because Aretha Franklin told me so, but to still feel so much darkness and feeling still so lost was just a sad thing for me. And so the way I wrote my book, the darkness is definitely seen. The pain, the sadness, everything that I went through, that's that dark place. And so you'll see that throughout my book, how I got out of that situation and feeling so lost.
So your mother obviously was a tremendous mom to you.
Of course.
And with that happening with your father, how much did that instill in you to become the best parent that you could be, considering that abandonment and how that made you feel?
Um, Actually, the way I turn it in my mind, actually, I try not to think about the abandonment part when it comes to the children. I think about the good things that my father did do, which was instill education in me from young. I mean, studying really hard as a child. And so I always wanted to be like him. I found him to be a intellectual. I felt like he was so smart. We would sit down and play chess, and he would teach me backgammon and different things at such a young age. It was just like almost preparing me for his departure in a way, you
Wow.
know. And so um those things from 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, for me to be now 35 and still remember it like it was yesterday is really crazy to me. As far as me as a mom, I just really just try to instill that in them too. That education, there's so many opportunities in it for them. Like right now, my oldest daughter, she's 13, and she wants to attend early college for high school. She wants to, you know, do things to get ahead of the game. And I definitely push that and support that 100%.
The oldest one is Kaya,
Yes, that's Kaya.
and the youngest one is Sheila.
Yes, Sheila. I
That's
named her after my
named her
mom.
after your mom. Yeah,
Yes, yes,
that must was inspiring in some way. That's really kind of a legacy in every sense. Now here's a line, brothers and sisters. You have to get this book. Uh, every, this book, every chapter, and believe me, the chapters are not long, but they cover it. Even though it's called Poems from the Soul, it really has the feel, and it could be intentional on your part as an autobiography.
yes, yes. That's what I was going for. Just telling my story. So I felt safer telling my story in a poetic way. And the importance of that for me was to translate a dark story into something beautiful and feminine and gorgeous, and make me feel the beauty that I always wanted to feel throughout my life. And I want women to feel beautiful. And when I say beautiful, just not physical beauty, internally, the love that a woman should have for herself. And so being feeling lost and feeling abandoned definitely triggers something when it comes to your capacity to love as a woman, when it comes to marriage, when it comes to finding a significant other, and when it comes to loving your own children and loving others in general. And so when you don't have that father figure in your life, it definitely affects women and children. It definitely does. I know it definitely affected me and still affects me today as a grown woman.
It affected me personally, and that's why I wanted to be the best father that I could for my
Hmm.
children. I don't try to give a romantic situation considering my mom and dad. You know, my mother raised me, but I try not to give a romantic version because romantic versions are not transparent.
Hmm.
You know how whatever you went through affects you. But here's a line in one of the chapters, ladies and gentlemen, called "Shrimps and Grit." Now, I'm just going to read the last paragraph. Her love chills the mimosas. Anybody know what a mimosa is? All right. And her smile fills you up like a bowl of shrimp and cheese grits. She blesses your life and generations after, referring to a mother's love uh,
Yes.
as it relates to the mother and how she feels about her children, which is obviously what your mother gave to you, and obviously what you're giving to Kaya and Sheila.
Yes, absolutely. My mother never gave up on me. She was definitely frustrated. She was definitely frustrated, and kudos to my mom for for being able to manage all of my different journeys through life. And she's still, you know, right by my side. I love my mom to death for everything that she's done in
I
my
love
life.
that description about a mimosa. You know, a lot of people know the description. They want to use a flower. They want to use a, I mean, not in your case as it relates,
Hmm.
but They want to use the beach. They want to use blue waters. But you said a mimosa, man. That is creative.
That's right.
That is so creative. Now, here's one. I am a queen, and I'm reading the last paragraph of that. I carry myself like a queen, yet I am still a rose. Whether or not a handsome man notices my intellect, loyalty, and love is a true grit.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously you have it was already instilled in you to be an intellect.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
you're an intellect in every sense of the word, and an intellect. In addition to people, and I know you're going for your master's and doctorate, but
Mm-hmm.
in addition to people with master's and doctorate degrees, I mean, you're a natural intellect who seeks to learn more.
Yes.
How do you say that to students who? Because I've met many people with master's degrees, and I didn't hear much conversation after that. I mean, I think some people go to school, get the paper, but don't read anything. I was told that I should read beyond the degree.
Yeah.
How do you tell people who are going to school, in that matter, how important that is?
It's really, really important. It's really, really important to educate yourself. If you like, if you want to excel in life, you have to, it's so important, your mind, especially, with age, you start forgetting certain things. So just as important as it is, on TV where they tell you to exercise a certain amount of times a
Yeah,
day,
yeah.
it's the same thing with reading, and it's the same thing with education. And when I say educate yourself, you can educate yourself academically, but there's other ways to learn besides going to school. You learn every day in different ways, just from random conversations with people, just being engaging. It's a difference between being in a workshop and just sitting there, as opposed to being engaged and actually asking the right questions and getting the right answers back and going home and studying those and applying those to your life. And so the biggest thing is not only study, but just apply those tools that you learn and have mastered to your everyday life. And once you start applying those skills, they become second nature. And before you know it, you done mastered the skill of being an intellectual, of being an educator, and being a writer. So it's really, really important for us to continue to do those things.
You mentioned a few times in the book about how God, his presence in your life, and what that meant for you. In your own words, please emphasize on that.
So a lot of people don't know, my dad was a preacher. At one point in his life, after leaving, he was a preacher. And I there's some things that the book doesn't discuss, but in life, I learned how, when I was really, really young, with everything going on, I had what's called night terrors, where I would, scream out in my sleep, different things like that. Sometimes I punch a wall in my sleep. Just I don't know why, but it was just a lot of nightmares that I would have. And I remember my grandmother, rest in peace. My grandmother had me get on my knees and pray. And she said, every time, you get a night terror, get up and get on your knees and you pray. And then you won't have that nightmare anymore. And that's what I did. And every time in my life when it got really, 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 really rough, and I just had nothing else, I get on my knees and I know that God will hear me and listen to me. And growing up, going to my dad's church, I sang a lot in the choir. I sang, and that was my outlet for everything that I was going through. Another thing that I hadn't discussed was during my second pregnancy, I had to have brain surgery while pregnant. And I was so sick. I just thought that that was it. So I just said, God, forgive me for my sins. And I just was ready to just go. And I said to the nurse, I said, if I don't make it, name my child after my mother. And that was the one thing that I said. And when I woke up, that moment on in my life, when I woke up from that, I knew that there was no question that there was a God, that I was alive at that moment. It was no question in my mind. Now, the way I go about spiritually is a lot different from a lot of people. You know, I talk to God in my own terms, and I believe in myself, and his love, everything is everlasting. Like, it's the greatest love you'll ever receive. And so I would say to a lot of people who do feel lost in life, to if you really want to know how to love and the capacity to love, then you have to know God. You have to know God in order to know how to love. Because it is just, to have that type of unconditional love that God talks about in the Bible is just, a lot of people can't even fathom it. But sometimes a testimony, sometimes a life experience will just let you know that he exists. And you have to just, I want to say, you just have to let go and let God sometimes. Stop trying to do everything on your own, and stop trying to keep your eyes closed when you see that the light is there for you. You know, be inspired, keep your mind open, and be open to a lot of things that you read, and be open to talking to people and being engaging in people and treating them the way you want to be treated. So it's a lot of things that I would say spiritually, that I really hope that a lot of people are blessed by my book, and blessed by my testimony, and blessed by my life. Because if, like I said, if it hadn't been for other people in my life steering me in the right direction, I wouldn't be here today. And I am a living, breathing testimony that there is a God that can, that is powerful, that will change your circumstances. Seriously, because like I said, when you read my story, you know where I came from. And for you to see me today is definitely a God for sure.
No question about it. There, when you talked about reading other things, there was a preacher, you were too young to remember, but he only died about 5 years ago. But I think maybe your mother might have heard of him, because he used to pastor a church in Brooklyn called Concord Baptist Church.
Okay.
And his name was Dr. Gardner Taylor. He used to say to preachers, have a Bible in one hand and a newspaper in the other, which is to expand your reading and to incorporate additional things that you read into your narrative or into your storytelling. So that comes from an educator, that statement right there. Now, here's a paragraph that was most powerful and emotional, coming from your mind. 34 years a slave to the discrimination of my skin and gender. I can't breathe. You're suffocating me. Torturing my hope, attacking my faith. My fight to reach my soul, my goals and aspirations are my protest. All I ever wanted to be, wise, free. But I can't, because I'm trapped in this brown skin, 34 years a slave. To oppression in America, I've been coerced into embracing the Black struggle. Go back to Africa. Wait, what? I didn't choose it to be Black. I didn't choose to be Black. My skin chose me, only to be pushed into a never-ending fight to survive racism. I mean, in America, is somebody going to make this a real prophetic rap song? I mean, really, and I'm not trying to be funny, Ms. Ridley. I'm just trying to, how powerful it is.
Mm-hmm.
This is a very powerful point.
Absolutely. Definitely. I feel like a lot of us, we grow up, and I know I didn't have the talk about racism in America growing up. So that was one thing that my dad we didn't have a conversation about that. So once my dad left, I felt alone in the world, that I had to face the obstacles of growing up as a young Black woman, trying to establish herself and learning what the world felt about my skin color. And so not only was I struggling to deal with my dad being gone, but I was struggling to deal with just loving myself and loving my own skin. I remember the first time someone told me to literally go back to Africa. That's why it's in there, because someone literally told me to go back to Africa. And the interesting part about it was the person couldn't physically see me. I guess from my speech alone, the person insinuated that I was a African-American woman and that I didn't deserve to be in this country, when all I was trying to do was help them. And that's the part that I didn't understand. Sometimes you don't initiate a fight, and you want to instill change. But some people will never listen to you because of the color of your skin. And that's another thing that I had to push to the side and not allow that to stop me from voicing my opinion and making suggestions on how things need to change. No matter what happens, this is my skin color, and it's not going to change. But the only thing that I can change is the way I think and the way I see the world. That'll be one thing that changes with time. But my skin color, I will always be an African-American woman. And so just understanding that and just hoping that other girls learn about it before they get into a situation where they don't know how to advocate for themselves in those type of situations. A lot of people, the one thing is the N-word, how we react to the N-word most of the times violently. But how do you advocate for yourself when you're around people who discriminate or even hate you because of your skin color, which you haven't chosen for yourself? How do you intellectually advocate for yourself? And like I said, you have to educate your mind so you can speak up for yourself and not allow people to sit there and dictate who you are based on your skin. That's discriminatory. You can't allow people to continue to oppress us. We can't allow it at all. It's not acceptable behavior. It's hurtful. And I know a lot of people say, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt. Those things do hurt sometimes. And it's up to us to make changes and voice our opinions and continue to protest. And when I spoke about protesting, I spoke about education being my protest. That's the one thing. I haven't walked to protest. My protest is educating myself, because that is something my ancestors could not do. They weren't allowed to educate themselves. So that's the way I protest, because in educating myself, I can give that information to my community and help make improvements.
My guest, Sister Tameka Ridley, Mrs. Tameka Ridley, and of course, a wonderful husband, a gentleman of a guy. Please, you can cash up her as a gift, $, Tameka Ridley, and she has been so inspiring tonight. Now I can freely say that Tameka Ridley, Derek, as you put it back in full screen, Tameka Ridley is my cousin. And on my mom's side, she didn't know my mother, but I remember Tameka as a little girl. Her mother, Sheila, and I grew up together, but Sheila will always tell, she'll probably say to Tameka later, yeah, but Larry's older than I am. And that's true. And so your aunt, Deborah Lawrence, certainly is an educator, always has been encouraging. I see her in the future as probably one of the matriarchs of the family as time goes on. Of course, I think that Elaine is that currently. Your Aunt Elaine Stewart. Tameka's grandmother on my mom's side, Carol, used to babysit me. I was a preteen. And I want her to know that Carol was a fun person, but she was tough. She didn't take, as some people say, no tea for the fever. She really was. And certainly the Lord took her from us. But I want you to know how proud you made me feel tonight as a writer, as a thinker, as one who is connected to our African heritage. And I think without a doubt, you're still going to be a blessing to someone. I want the Bethlehem Nation to know, I know there are other people watching, but I'm specifically talking to the congregation where I serve. I'm going to have, at some point in 2021, going to have Tameka to come and do a book signing at our church so that you can see and get a hold of this book, A Rose in a Dark Place. And she was able to articulate, for those of you who listen, probably felt what I felt. And so I'm thankful to God for her. And I'm even certainly thankful to God for her being my cousin.
Oh, thank you.
Now, give us any encouraging words you want to give this audience, words you want to give people, words you want to give those who've gone through similar situations and are going through right now. What are your words of inspiration, encouragement? And I want to say this before you do that. Considering the fact that you write, what books have you read would you recommend to someone?
Oh, yes. So one of my favorite books, I'm a big Sister Soldier fan. I love No Disrespect. That's one of my favorites. I love Maya Angelou's The Heart of Woman. Yeah. Becoming by Michelle Obama. I'm very big on stories, real stories that resonate with me from African American women. I feel like it's really important that we support one another and we learn from each other's stories how to overcome and empower one another. So those are definitely 3 books that I absolutely love from great African American women / authors / writers. It's incredible. As far as leaving a message with people watching today, I would definitely say exercise your mind. That's the message today. That's the most important message that I can leave everyone with. Read, exercise your mind, exercise your voice. Know that you can be heard. Don't let anyone stop you. Okay? You're destined to be what God intended for you to be. And in order to do that, you have to advocate for yourself. You have to be strong mentally in order to fight the challenges that are going to be ahead. And know that you're not the only person going through it. And you know what? Share your testimony with people, and not just orally, written. Let's change history as we know it with our own stories, exercising our mind, and teaching our children and generations after us to continue to do that so that we can be stronger together.
Well, one of the very good, great thinkers in my family that I'm proud of course, I'm going to mention, my daughters and my son, who are watching, by the way, mm-hmm. And Zinzi, Zari, Nia, Zaziana, and Zamir. We have all of these bright, and the reason why I haven't mentioned the older ones, I know you're smart, but what we got on the come up in our family is just such an inspiration to me personally. And I want to thank you again so much, my cousin, Tameka Ridley, my blood.
Thank you.
By the way, her great grandmother, Hazel and my grandmother were sisters. So, mm-hmm. I don't know if you know that, but I just figured I'd let you know that they were sisters.
I didn't know that.
People don't talk like she should, but anyway, I just figured I'd let you know your mother don't talk. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Our guest next week will be one of the great thinkers of the pulpit, the Reverend Roger C. Williams, the senior pastor of the First Baptist Church in Glen Cove. And I can assure you, as time moves on with this program, we will have Ms. Ridley back on, not because she's cousin, but because she has something to offer. Thank you. God bless you. Have a good night, brothers and sisters, and see you next week.
Thank you.